Welcome back to our live and rolling coverage of America welcomes Prime Minister Modi. As we all know, Prime Minister Modi is all set to arrive in Delaware in Wilmington, which is President Biden's hometown. And this is where the Quad Summit will be taking place in a short while from now. In fact, the Indian Prime Minister will be arriving at the airport in Philadelphia, and soon after he will be headed to Delaware. We've been bringing you those live visuals of how the Indian diaspora has arrived in full strength. They've in fact, they've been thronging the hotel in Delaware, where Prime Minister will be residing for a short while before he takes off for the Quad Summit. What will be on the agenda is something we will be discussing with Siddhant, who's joining me on the phone line. There's a lot of focus on what will be discussed during the Quad Summit. Siddhant, give us a sense of what are you learning is going to be on the agenda, not to forget how significant the timing of this Quad Summit is, since it's being hosted by the outgoing US President.
Well, Akanksha, first of all, Prime Minister Modi's plane has landed in Philadelphia. And in fact, we are putting out those visuals of Prime Minister's special aircraft at Philadelphia Airport. Sometime from now, Prime Minister will leave for Delaware, that is President Biden's hometown. Now, this time around, Akanksha, US has decided to give a personal touch to the Quad grouping, and this is going to be the last Quad meeting of President Biden. So, it has been kept at President Biden's hometown, which is in Delaware. In fact, we have also been told that President Biden will take all these world leaders to his school, where the same school where he completed his early education. So it is kind of a personal touch that President Biden wanted to give to these world leaders as they are traveling to US for the Quad Leaders Summit. There's also going to be Quad banquet and also an event dedicated to cervical cancer. I would also like to draw attention of viewers that this giving personal touch to this grouping is something which US has done before also. If you remember, at the time of AUKUS, which took place at Camp Table, the farmhouse residence of US President. So, it also tells about the closeness and the proximity that these countries have and the significance they hold for the United States. So that is kind of a message that President Biden wants to send out. Also, let's not forget that it's going to be the last Quad meeting for Fumio Kishida, the Japanese Prime Minister.
Yes.
So he's also going to step down this month. So it's also an opportunity for Prime Minister Modi to sit down with both the leaders, thank them for their contribution efforts to strengthen ties with India, and also to give strength to the groupings like Quad. As far as Quad is concerned, yes, there are multiple issues. In fact, I did speak to the U.S. State Department spokesperson yesterday. They said that Quad has nothing to do with military alignment, etc., etc. It's more about HADR, climate action, cybersecurity. So this time around also the working groups, there are 6 working groups in the Quad. So the working groups are going to remain the same. The focus area would be the same. But we could expect, in fact, some sources have indicated that as far as the Russia-Ukraine, the paragraph on Russia-Ukraine in the joint statement is concerned, we could expect some change in the language this time around, because this time around Prime Minister Modi is one world leader who has visited both Russia and Ukraine. And let's not forget, peace is one of the top priorities of Prime Minister Modi in his third term. And he's giving all efforts to make sure that peace prevails in Europe. And this is the reason that we could expect, some kind of a change in a language. Whether it's going to be more stronger, whether it's going to be more inclined towards Ukraine. I really don't have any idea about that. But there could be some change in the language. Point number one. Point number two is that Prime Minister will also hold a bilateral meeting with President Biden and Prime Minister Kishida.
Right. Siddhant, I'm going to request you to please continue staying with us, because Aman is joining us live from outside that hotel where Prime Minister is all set to arrive. Remember, on the right side of your screen, you can see visuals of Prime Minister's plane, in fact, touching down at the Philadelphia International Airport. Aman, in how much time should we now expect Prime Minister to be arriving in Delaware?
Yes, Akanksha, the plane has just landed at the Philadelphia International Airport. I think it's about a half an hour drive from there to this hotel. Inside this hotel now, DuPont Hotel in Delaware. The Prime Minister will be arriving here in about another 45 minutes, we can say. And after that, his schedule is he'll be here for a while because the Indian diaspora, the Gujarati diaspora, I would say, has organized a small function for him here, a small performance, a cultural performance will be made before the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, after a bit of rest here, will be moving then to the Quad Summit venue. First, he's having a bilateral meeting with Joe Biden, which could last almost an hour. This is expected to be a substantive meeting, maybe the last meeting between Narendra Modi and Joe Biden as the US President. And so this will give an occasion to the Prime Minister to thank President Biden for his contribution to Quad, for also his contribution in making the India's and US diplomatic bilateral relationship stronger. India and US are now strategic global partners in a big way, and I think that these talks are expected to be substantive. After that, we will see the Quad Summit between the four leaders, the US President, the Indian Prime Minister, the Japanese Prime Minister and the Australian Prime Minister, all of whom have arrived in Delaware. And this Quad Summit could go on also for over a couple of hours. After that, we will see the Cancer Moonshot event, which is a new addition to Quad this time. All the four Quad nations are coming together in the fight against cancer, especially cervical cancer, how they can collaborate and help each other, help the patients of cancer as well as help their families. This is going to be a landmark event. We'll know more details in the evening when a readout will be issued. Prime Minister Modi is also having bilateral meetings separately with the Japanese Prime Minister and the Australian Prime Minister as well. There's an evening reception to wrap up the entire Quad Summit, and from here and at New York time around 9 o'clock tonight, the Prime Minister would be leaving for New York from Delaware.
All right. If I could quickly bring in Zaka as well, who continues to stay with us on the broadcast. Zaka, important to also highlight what one can expect from that bilateral meet between the US President and the Indian Prime Minister. You were there when the Indian Prime Minister was hosted to that state White House dinner in June of 2023. How far has that bond between the Indian Prime Minister and US President come?
You know, if you look at 4 years back when President Biden got elected, South Bloc was worried about the trajectory of the relationship, whether President Biden would be as deeply invested in the relationship as Trump was or President Obama was prior to him. But I think he's really qualitatively not just doubled down on the Indo-US partnership, but I think the breadth of the partnership has significantly increased under President Biden. So at the state visit, which you mentioned, which happened last year, and I was there covering that at the White House, look at the areas where India and the United States are now cooperating. This Cancer Moonshot event that Aman was talking about, that's going to be one of the highlights of the Quad. Last year, they announced joint production of jet engines. I mean, that is huge for American companies to part with that kind of sensitive technology. Lockheed Martin and others to part with that kind of sensitive technology is a huge development. I mean, it's not even something that they share with their NATO military allies, at least not all of them. Then the Predator drone deal. I think it was 31 Predator drones that had been agreed to be bought by India, some for the Navy, some for the Air Force, and so on. Again, a significant military deal. Subsequent to that, we've also had deals that have these foundational agreements. All the foundational agreements have now been signed between India and the United States. So I think there is the depth and the breadth of the relationship has significantly improved under President Biden. And I think to his credit, one should acknowledge that he's not left aside this relationship. There were other pressing concerns, not least the two wars that are happening right now, one between Russia and Ukraine, the other between Israel and Hamas. So he's really got a lot on his plate. And yet, the fact that he's taking time out to host the leaders of these four countries in his hometown, in Wilmington, in Delaware, taking them to his high school, taking them to the places where he grew up and so on, in a sense, a sort of fitting farewell Quad Summit. Not just for Joe Biden, but also for Fumio Kishida, the Japanese Prime Minister. So I think the Quad will now be placed in good hands, whoever is the next president of the US, whether it's Donald Trump or whether it is Kamala Harris. But the trajectory of the relationship, the deepening and the breadth of the relationship, the areas where Quad is now cooperating, climate change, disaster relief, mitigation of even things like poverty alleviation. That's not something that anybody would have given the Quad's agenda or to be on the Quad's plate when the four countries came together. But I think the underlying reason why they came together, which is the China threat, that now seems to be the foundational sort of element of this relationship. But they're building this relationship into, you know, all kinds of skyscrapers, which indicates that the breadth of this relationship is much more than any other bilateral.
Which is why